on my feet, stomping out the negativity. Everybody not a friend of me, spread the love, still I move deliberately. Bully face on, but the smile be heavenly. Brooklyn girls, so they love the energy, love sincerity. So I take the liberty to take them on a journey lyrically. Through hallways and alleys, dark days I carry, sharp pains and bellies. All days be heavy when you're programmed to survive. Legendary ciphers get the MCs in the jobs. The city never sleeps, slept from 1 to 5 when COVID hit the block and we had to stay inside. Tough love is all I know, so be gentle with my soul. Learn to navigate winters with no coat. If you never been cold, you never been broke.
Wow. Hey everyone, welcome back to the next chapter. I am your host, Minister Cat, aka Miss Kitty Rose. And I'm back with another episode of navigating the space of raising adult children. So this week's topic is going to be an interesting one, and it's going to be one that comes from the heart. Because like I always say, I am in it with you all. So what I'm experiencing is what I'm doing the research about and what I'm assisting, hopefully, all of you out there with. So the topic of the week is, I wish I knew then. Navigating adulthood with your children. I wish I knew then. How many of us have said that? How many of us have, in our 40s and in our 50s, when we get that light bulb moment, say, I wish I knew now what I knew. I wish I knew now then. We always say that, right? So I wanted to have a conversation about, well, now that our adult children, or now that some of our adult children live with us in this adult space, how is parenting really effective? How is these conversations that you're now having as adults giving real impact to the future adults your child is becoming? So this episode is going to provide adult children with candid, experience-based guidance on critical life areas. I'm going to foster, hopefully, open communication and equip you and them with knowledge that parents wish they had in their youth. This show will integrate historical content on parent-child communication and emphasize the benefits of early, transparent conversations. So let me give you the setup. And I don't think my adult children will mind this, because I think this is actually very healthy of us, okay? So my oldest, my 30-year-old, happens to be dating someone that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, right? And he says to me, well, Mom, you're not looking at me as a man. You're looking at me as your son. Like, almost like I'm looking at him as a boy. I'm a 30-year-old man. You talk about, me as a 30-year-old, and I'm not fully developed yet. But what about those men that you were dealing with at 60 and 50, and they weren't ready to step up? Those were men? So how am I not a man? Because I'm a man. And you got to look at me like that. Now, I'm sure he said it like that, but that's how I heard it, right? And I thought to myself, how do I now reply where he can hear me, or at least plant the seed of what I'm coming from? So when he brought up, what about the men you've dated in your 60s and 50s, right? I first thing was had to take ownership of the part I played in those relationships not working, not entirely on those men in their 50s or 60s, but those men in those 50s and 60s, like myself in my 50s, are now learning ourselves. We're having these lessons that make sense to us now. So now we're able to make better decisions because we're doing the work to be accountable. And what happens a lot of times with young adults who are parents, is that we're young adults. We're only 20, 21, 22, 23, 30 years old as parents, and also as husband and wives. So if we don't get the chance to learn about ourselves until we're actually 45, 50, when our adult children go to college, then yes, we're not even in our full development yet. Because we didn't even get a chance to get to know ourselves in that early stage, because we had to worry about being somebody's parent, we had to worry about being someone's spouse, we had to play that role, we had to do those responsibilities. When did we have the time to, hey, Catherine, who are you? What do you like? And when it came down to before I became someone's wife, before I became someone's mother, how did I learn about sex? How did I learn about my body when it came to sex? So now that I'm in my 20s, and I may live with my parents and I may not, how am I moving as a sexual being out here? And the thing that I want to have this real conversation is because now that all of my children are adults, sexually active, but none of them are married and none of them are in courtship relationships. So what does that mean? What does that mean when we talk about the I wish I would knew? I knew that, I wish I knew then, right? When it comes to sexual health in relationships, I want us to know about the foundational importance of understanding sexual health beyond the physical and historical content of parental silence. So when I thought about this title about I wish I knew then, I wish I knew in my 20s about what happens with me as a sexual being. And because my parents, whether I lived with them or not, even early on, did not have such conversations with me, there were certain things I did in my 20s or even prior to my 20s that when I was in my 40s and 50s, I reflected and was like, I wish I knew that then. So that the wisdom that parents gain over time, a real and honest conversation with adult children, sharing guidance parents didn't have. Acknowledging the difficulties parents face in sharing past mistakes, but emphasizes the value of vulnerability. So let me give you some historical content, right? I want to talk about how the communication between parent and child patterns was, or what we know it to be, particularly around sensitive topics like sex and money. This is a new generation, you can say, right? Where we're woke. So we're doing our best to have more transparent conversations. So we say. We say that now we're creating generational wealth and we're educating our children about money, but we still don't know how to handle money. So we say. So in our previous generations, those conversations definitely wasn't being had. We've had episodes where we've discussed that the way that even government or society has society running with the whole school and the whole work and all the things that you got to do by the time you get home, homework and cooking and family time and putting them in bed and then starting the routine all over again. When did we get a lesson about sitting down and talking with each other? Now, we got the lesson about sitting down at dinner with each other. We got that lesson. A lot of families come from that background where we sat down at dinner. But what were those conversations like? Were they one of encouragement? Were they one of knowledge? Were they one of sharing stories? What were they like? Or were they just, how was your day? What's on TV? And this is no judgment. This is based on what I happen to know, what I happen to have experienced, and what I happen to have discussed amongst so many other families. I remember even in my own household, up until the age of 15 when I lived with my mother, I don't remember any in-depth conversations about my body, about sex, about masturbation, about orgasms, about sexuality, about partners, about my role as a partner sexually with a man. Such conversations, oh my, cut your pearls. Does that mean she wasn't a good mother? I don't think so, no. But did her mother have those conversations with her? And did my grandmother's mother have those conversations? And if my grandmother became someone's wife or mother at 13, 14, because she is a Southerner, and y'all on the land, and y'all putting cotton 5, 4 o'clock in the morning, like, when is it that those opportunities even presented itself to know to have those conversations? How many young girls and boys on their wedding night knew nothing of what to do? How many mothers said, well, your job as a wife is just to please your husband, just to have sex? Ew. Ew. But what about also the dangers of sexual relationships with people before you meet that one? So I want to highlight the benefits of early and open conversations during the youth and in teen years for better adult outcomes. Like when it comes to sexual health, promiscuity, and loose behavior, we may not at the time in our 20s think that we're promiscuous, but one partner too much is too much. That's not the saying I'm trying to say. But until you are with the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, having sex with that person, this person, that person, because you like them, or really what got me to thinking about my adult children who live on their own, and I lived on my own as a young age, is the company you keep. Who you bring in and out your house, or whose house you go to. At this age now, I'm mindful about when I meet a man. Do I go in his car? Do I let him come to my house? Do I go to his house? In my 20s, I wasn't that thoughtful. I wasn't that mindful. I got in strangers' cars. I let people come to my house. What? So when societal labels and personal impact is put on us, right? And these loose behaviors, you're thinking of someone who is just out, who's a hoe. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about someone who's just frequently. I'm talking about even those who think, oh, I like this guy. Oh, I like this woman, you know. But the dangers of bringing strangers into your home or entering unknown spaces based on your free spirit in your 20s, I thank God every day that I survived my 20s before I became somebody's wife and mother. Because I wasn't a loose girl, but I definitely was in situations that I had no business being in. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's not even about being places that you have no business being in. It's about understanding how you're moving and what you should and should not do in your life, period. And in your 20s, you don't always think about those things. So as adult as you think that you are, the things that just not in your mindset, like your safety, it's just not in your mindset. Grown as much as you want to be grown. But if you're having these conversations earlier on, and you emphasize the risks of bringing strangers into your home or going to unfamiliar places, especially in your 20s, when you have this free spirit, it might override caution. And it might allow you to think about your actions before you're in it or before you do it. And then it's that soul ties element, an energy exchange. I was telling my adult son that we all got trauma And some of our trauma ain't even got nothing to do with us. Some of our trauma is from others, our parents, their parents. And we got these energy on us that we have no idea what it is. So I didn't learn about soul ties until I was in my 40s. I'd never heard of this. So soul ties, right, is the concept of soul ties and the energetic implications of sexual intimacy. There are dangers of negative energy that can be exchanged and affect one's well-being, because that is the unseen side of intimacy. We know, sometimes that we got that pit in our stomach that says, I shouldn't do something. But you know what that is? And we don't know it in our 20s unless we're taught. That's our third guy. Our gut instincts is the Holy Spirit, is the third eye that we have. And that instinct, before they are fully developed, doesn't always allow us to go with that feeling because we haven't learned quite what it is yet. So if we had the conversation earlier, or now in their 20s as adults, living with us, being sexually active, are we now having the conversation about the exchange of energies from different partners? Or are we just saying, strap up, young man, strap up, young daughter? But are we giving them the tools on why it's important to strap up? Not just to avoid sexually transmitted diseases, not just to avoid being pregnant, but to avoid attaching yourself to trauma and energy that has nothing to do with you. So the first video I got is about soul ties, what you need to know about sexual attachment. And I chose this clip, like I always say, I want you guys to do your own research, watch the whole video, because I'm only using, 3 minutes of it. But this 3 minutes supposed to now shift the talk from morality to biology and spirit. Because I really believe that even when the scriptures talks about fornication, right? I don't believe, this is my belief, I don't believe fornication is meant towards the person that you're in a relationship with. I think the sin in fornication is the promiscuity of sexual relationships with different people. I could be wrong. I could be justifying my own fornication. But that's what I believe the scriptures are teaching us to avoid. But this clip is going to talk from morality to biology and spirit. It explains the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and how it creates a chemical addiction to partners, explaining why casual sex is rarely truly casual. It frames sex as a covenant act that ties souls together, making it perfect for explaining why certain soul ties are so hard to break later in life. So let's check out this video, Soul Ties, what you need to know about sexual attachment, and talk about it when we come back.
Soul ties a lot of times have to do with our relationship that we have with the person, not just mentally, not just emotionally, not just from a purpose perspective, not just from a feelings perspective, but also from a sexual perspective. That a lot of times we're tied in a knot with someone, not just because we like them or just because we love them, even though that's part of it, but it's also biology. We've had a sexual relationship with him, and God has so wired a covenant. God has so wired covenantal connection through sexual relation that when we have sexual relationship with someone, our body actually releases oxytocin, which is a hormone that bonds you to that person. Because when God created sexual relationship, he created that consummation and that covenantal connection to be a bonding agent, the final bonding agent or activity that happens that says, this is where we're going to be and this is where we're going to stay. I mean, God has so wired our bodies for the covenant that he has created called marriage. And the way that he has created it and the way that he has designed it is for us to not ever have to get untied. It's for us to not ever have to tear away. It's for us to stay with the person that we have covenanted with, not just from a commitment perspective, not just from a relational perspective, but also from a God covenantal perspective when it is consummated through sexual relationship. And when that bonding agent is released, when oxytocin is released, God has so wired our bodies that we should not have to ever get untied from the tie that has been developed in the relationship. Listen, that's why it gets so hard. That's why the first person that you have sexual relationship with normally is the hardest to ever break away from, because that's when the most oxytocin is released, the first time you have sexual relation, because that first time is supposed to be the last time as it relates to the person that you're going to be with. Because from a covenant perspective, it is consummated through the sexual relationship, which is why a woman bleeds on the man. Because covenants in the Bible were sealed in blood. Jesus shed his blood. That is the new covenant, which means you cannot be separated from him. The spiritual oxytocin is released when his blood was shed and you accepted and received. You received the sacrifice that Jesus made. The spiritual oxytocin is released, and nothing can separate us from the love of God. That's what the Bible says. And when you look at sexual relationship, there's nothing that's supposed to be able to separate you from that covenant. And so physical oxytocin is released, because in the spiritual realm, when Jesus sacrificed for us and shed that blood to make us recipients of the new covenant, there's nothing that can separate us.
Amen. Amen. Because when it goes against its purpose, other things can linger. And it's not supposed to be random. It's supposed to be with the person that you're in the courtship period with, planning on, hopefully, having a life partner with. But in your 20s, that may not happen. In your 30s, that may not happen. But we're talking about our 20-year-olds, right, that we live with. So the conversation we're having with them is, if you were not in a courtship relationship, the connection that you built with someone sexual already is starting off wrong, because you're going against its purpose and design of what it was enhancing in the relationship. So now when we're just pleasing one part of ourselves, that animal instinct, that sexual chemistry, and we're using that as, well, we're damaging potential relationships because of things that can linger on from the previous sexual relationships we had. Now, when it comes to money, we always say that we're giving them generational wealth, or we always talk about, teaching them how to save. So I think last week I was talking about when you're having the conversation about, them being home with the purpose of moving out, looking for their own space, right? And instead of having expectations, let's have the conversation. So I took my own advice and I had a conversation with my 28-year-old who now lives back at home. And I'm like, okay, well, are you planning on leaving? Because I thought since you're back in grad school that, you'll stay home while you're in school. Why rush out if you're in school? And his thing was, I'm 28. I don't want to live under my mother. And I respect that. That makes sense. So the conversation that was had was, okay, well, now what's the plan? Because if you remember last week when we talked about most parents don't have their adult children pay any bills, or they want them to save, but what if that adult child is actually not saving? Like, then you get resentful, and then you have an argument, then you start talking to them, blah, 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 all of that, right? So I took that, my own advice, I had the conversation, and I had the conversation in the sense of, well, what's the plan? And, you know, you can't spend X amount of dollars if you're having this goal, because you're not moving in with anyone else now. You're moving in with yourself. It's just not the rent. It's the rent, it's the move of your furniture, it's buying new furniture, it's now you being responsible for Con Ed, cable, all of yourself. So you're saving more than just for your apartment. But how can you do that if it's summertime now? You're spending money on the weekend, you're spending money throughout the week. When are you really spending or saving your money? You have to sacrifice. So in sacrificing, I'm, as your mom, not going to check your money, not going to tell you how to spend your money, but I will have a conversation about some things that you can do to have financial security. Why? Because these conversations weren't had with me. So building a solid financial future from a young age, giving them financial foundations and future planning, teaching them about sacrifice versus living in the moment. Address that now that they're in their 20s, that the mindset can't be, let's just live. And contrast it, we have to contrast it or teach them about the long-term benefits of financial foresight. Financial foresight, like budgeting, like saving and understanding credit. Not understanding debt, but understanding credit. I wish I knew about life insurance in my 20s. My mother gave me my life insurance policy, but didn't teach me about it, didn't tell me anything. She was like, okay, now you're responsible for the payments. So in my head, I thought life insurance was for you when you got older. So I didn't have it. And now that I know about all the things I could have did if I had life insurance in my 20s, what kind of security I could have built, what kind of things I could have used that life insurance to invest in when it came to my kids' education, when it came to getting a home maybe, just certain things that I could have did that no one had that conversation. So do I repeat that same thing now and not have that conversation with my adult children about what are you doing right now with your money? Providing them with a peace of mind and protecting future dependents. Because guess what? Kids are coming. Kids are coming. And you're never financially prepared for kids. But if you invest early in your 20s, then the power of compound interest and starting that investment early will benefit you in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s. And you're thinking, like, why does that even matter? Because time is an illusion, and it will be here and gone before you know it. Before we go to our second YouTube video, let's take our first break of the night. And then we'll come back and discuss what video I found to discuss financial literacy with your adult children. We'll come right back.
Comic Books for Justice was funded to do what many think is impossible: transform lives behind bars with comics, receiving the Community Leaders Grant from Citizens Committee for New York City. We will place 10,000 comics in correctional facilities across New York State through our Turning the Page initiative, in partnership with SUNY and Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison. Comics drive literacy, hope, and real change. And we're just getting started. Next up, Comics in the City, bringing this power to youth across NYC. Want to fuel this movement? Become one of our 100 super friends. Donate now. Visit cb4j.org and help us turn the page on justice.
I have a lot to say on this subject. Because like I said, I'm in it. So this might be a part 2 because we're only in still segment 2 about financial foundations and future planning. Because I don't want to skip over anything. I was looking at my outline and I was seeing like what can I shorten because we only have 26 minutes left to this show today. But everything I did the research, I didn't even use I used Manus 160 to do a scripted outline this week. I wanted to talk to you guys really, really from my heart. So I don't want to rush over any of this. I don't want to shorten this conversation because it's imperative, because we're not having it. But yet we live with adults. And we're still talking to them and prancing around like they're so sensitive and fragile like they're children. And we're not giving them real life conversations about what we did in our 20s that we learned from in our 30s. And why it's so essential. Why is this conversations, or why are these conversations so essential? Because at the end of the day, everybody's path is their own. Yes, you are absolutely right. Everybody's path is their own. But again, like I started the topic of, I wish I knew then. Because maybe if someone had these conversations with me in my 20s, maybe, just maybe, I would have made better decisions. I would have made wiser decisions. I would have made safetier decisions. Instead of when I'm 40 or 50, and thanking God that I'm still here. And again, they may not listen, but what are we losing by sharing? Maybe we might lose the same repetitive behavior that we as a people keep doing generation after generations. And that's why I told my son, it's not about you being 30 and not being a man or not. We got so much trauma as a people. Satan challenged God. Satan challenged Jehovah and said, people are not going to worship you just because. I was talking to someone, a young person, a 30-year-old yesterday, and he was saying, I just love people. I'm just good people. I don't know why I'm like this. I don't know why, it's dangerous to be this way. And I said to him, yes, but no. Because Jesus, when his disciples said, how will we recognize your people? Jesus did not say the race, the color, the age. He said, by the love that they show you. So we innately as a people, as Christians, as God-fearing people, have that innate feeling or being of love. Gentlemen, I want to believe we are more good than bad out in the world. But it doesn't negate the bad in the world. It doesn't negate the generations of teachings and examples of behaviors that we're all just doing, that we're even unaware that's messing us up, because that's what we're familiar with. So these conversations has to happen, and they really should start younger. But if they didn't, or they did, what does the conversation now look like? My husband, he asked me this week, about a certain situation with our 28-year-old, right? And he said, how is he? And I, gave my opinion about how he's doing. But what I said to my husband was, you can talk to him about this kind of feeling, because you have reference of what this feels like. You don't have to talk to your adult children about, some surface response to what they're going through in their 20s. You can give a reference to what you felt, how you got through that, instead of covering that up because you were embarrassed that you got your heart broken, or you were embarrassed that you got caught up in a situation that you weren't aware of. When I met my son's father, and this is the other thing about adulthood and hindsight, people always think, again, when it comes to sex, it can't happen to me. The first time I had sex with my son's father, I got pregnant. And I took for granted, because I'm 19 and he's 30, that he would do better, that he would protect us. Instead of taking my own responsibility, putting on a condom or using a condom or my own sense of birth control. But I wasn't taught about making decisions on your own or being accountable for your own actions. So I unknowingly put my life in someone else's hands, assuming he would make a better decision than I would. So when I told my son it's not about age, it's about uncovering, unveiling all of the things that we have already learned that we've been doing. And until we get to a point that we can focus on ourselves, we don't even know that we messed up. And a lot of times that doesn't happen until your 40s and 50s. So why wait? Why wait? That's all I'm saying. Give them the tools now in their 20s. Say, yes, I was in somebody's house I shouldn't have been in, and I felt disgusting when I left. Yes, I was heartbroken when this person broke up with me, and I felt like the end of the world, and I crawled up in a corner somewhere. Yes, all of that human stuff, because it's human. And guess what? You got past it. You learned from it. So why be ashamed to have that kind of conversation with your adult children? You're not having them with your teens and your children. You're having them with what we now say, what they now say, adults. So let me get back to the subject. So again, we probably going to have a second part to this, because when it comes back to the financial component, teaching them how to save, teaching them how to understand their relationship with money. We don't even get the relationship with money until later on. So why gatekeep that information? Excuse me. So this next video is a young adult guide to financial literacy. A young adult guide to financial literacy. Building a solid financial future from a young age, right? Sacrifice living in the moment and address that let live kind of idea, right? So what are we going to learn in this video? In this segment, it reframes insurance from an unnecessary expense to a vital safety net. It's going to highlight that young adults' biggest asset are times and the ability to make money. It specifically will cover why having a defensive financial plan like insurance or emergency funds prevents one from bad event. Wait, what? That doesn't make sense. Prevents one from wiping out years of progress. The exact lesson many parents wish they knew in their 20s. So let's check out this video, and then we'll go right back and we'll go right into our next segment when we come back.
Freedom. Yep. Yeah. And I think kind of what goes hand in hand with that, that's really heavy on the investing savings side of thing, but it's also insurance coverage, just from a long-term perspective, just making sure that you're protected with whether it's property and casualty, auto insurance, just making sure that you have the right limits in place. So, if you were to rear end somebody and you get sued, you're not having to come out of pocket to cover your things. Or, if you live in a place like Nashville where housing prices have skyrocketed over the last few years, just doing a quick insurance review to make sure what you do have is enough to rebuild your current house. So you're not having to come out of pocket there or figure out kind of where to move so you can do that. So I think it's always great just to do an insurance review on those types of things on an annual basis. And then outside of that, on the personal side is, life insurance, disability insurance, just making sure that those things are in place, because, a small amount of life insurance can go a really long way if something were to happen to you or a loved one unexpectedly. And just, as they're going through that, maybe you were the primary income earner, small amount of insurance can go a long way to help them get on their feet or, pay the bills while you're grieving. And so I think as important as the investment side of things are as well, the insurance side of thing, just for, unfortunately life happens and things happen and you need to be protected from that standpoint. And so it's always good just to have those in place and review to make sure it's adequate for your needs and your family's needs.
Yeah, it's a game of risk, and like you said, it's good to have something there just in case. I know sometimes it can feel like insurance is super not valuable, which a lot of times it can be. But insurance is one of those things where you hate it until you need it. Then whenever you need it, it's the best thing you could ever pay for, and that's the purpose of it. You don't want too much You don't want too little or lack thereof. You want just the right amount so that it's not taking up too much of your income, but also there's a balance of if and when you need it, it's there for you and it's there to help. So that's a good point. I think insurance is.
And for the most part, it's like a relatively low cost for what it would replace should it happen. I mean, you think about home insurance or, car insurance, a couple $100 a month, like it can go a long way if you were to need it. And on the backside of like you spent that money and you didn't use it, I mean, that's also a good thing because it means you didn't get into a car wreck or your house didn't burn down. And so, to your point, it's protecting that risk, which in most cases it's a very small amount of risk, but large sums of money are needed to cover those things when that risk does happen. And so, I think it's important.
Yeah, that's good. I think just as like a recap or a summary, or just one more, really to emphasize, if you're young, you're in your 20s, the two biggest assets you have are your ability to make money and time, and take advantage of them. Pay yourself first, put money in the bank, put savings aside, get you an emergency funds in place first, and then work on saving and investing and, building your balance sheet up with assets that grow and that can potentially
Protecting the risk. And when it comes to even you thinking about something that's going to be affecting years later, how about death ain't got no age no more? And we ain't even talking about death. We're really talking about investment. Because at your age now, in your 20s, it could be $25 a month. It could be $10. At the time that I first got mine, it was like $7, $10 a month. Now, that's 30 years ago. But you could still get an insurance policy now that's like $25, $50 a month. You spend that on coffee probably. And that small investment, even if you don't use it, is not going anywhere. So it's gonna build interest. And then when you start to build your family, if you start to build your family, it can now benefit things later on with your family that you might wanna do. And even if you don't use it then, it still builds to now when it is essential for that age of now you being 40, 50, and you've had life insurance up until X amount since your 20s. So there are multiple layers of benefit for the small investment that is protecting the risk of things that may not happen, but very well can happen. So I was told that I got 18 minutes left. And the other subject, or the other segment 3, is about proactive health and wellness and navigating independence. Because your adult children live with you now. Are you still making their doctor's appointments? Are you still reminding them of their doctor's appointments? So are they now taking charge of their health care? Are they taking care of, because preventive medicine, one of the reasons why preventive medicine and health insurance is valuable that you're paying for from your job is it will help educate you about understanding your body. I was a lot more prepared about things that was going to happen to me because of having a primary doctor in my 20s. Now, yes, I had a primary doctor because I was also a mother, but I've always been educated to having a primary doctor, someone who understood what was going on with you, because things change as you change. So now that I no longer live at home, or I do live at home, is my mom or dad still making those appointments for me? So teaching them how to now take charge of their health care. So I have a video for that, but I'm going to shift from the video because I think the key part to this video is understanding that our adult children now are the expert of their own body. And showing up is 90% of the battle, but it's their battle. Now, yes, we can still remind them, but are we making the appointments for them? No shame, no shade, something to think about. This video I have is 3 minutes long, and I said we weren't skipping over anything, so hey, I am not a liar, but we're gonna take a break before we go into our YouTube video. So let's take our second break of the night.
My son Ricky took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe. Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
So I'm not going to play the video because I only have 14 minutes left, but I wanted to discuss with you guys about, like I said, proactive health and wellness. I wanted you guys, the clip that I showed you, or wanted to show you, I wanted you guys to understand that it's empowering for young adults to manage their own health by showing up in their life and addressing that this adulthood stage is scary. Being responsible for everything in your life that your parents were assisting you with. But you're ready because you're adults. And what it does, it helps you build confidence in being newly independent adults. So when we have these primary doctors that we have these relationships with, that we make our appointments for, we know that we have to be honest with them. We have to completely be honest with our healthcare providers about our lifestyle choices so that we can get accurate diagnosis and effective treatment. And then we have to be aware of mental health. Therapy, talking out, not waiting until you explode for you to understand the possibility of being bipolar, being a slight bout of autism. Like, there's so many different things that silence takes over. So when we're having these conversations with our adult children that live with us, how are we addressing them in regards to self-care with their mental wellness, with their physical health and mental health? All right, we got 3 more segments, but segment 4 is the emotional resilience in healthy boundaries and career launch paths, right? So I wanted you guys to understand the emotional resilience and healthy boundaries and career launchpad. Right now, my daughter is 22. She graduated college last year in insurance. She's been in 2 locations, 2 jobs now since graduating college, and contemplating maybe a 3rd. But what I love about this is how many of us, when we get that good job in our 20s, stay, even though we're not happy. And then 30 years later, we're like, well, I've been on a job 30 years. But is that really the success if you were unhappy the whole 30 years? Or is it okay in your 20s to bounce around when you find that perfect place so that you can be happy 30 years later somewhere that you didn't settle for? So developing emotional intelligence and setting oneself up for professional success. How do we do that? How do we help them manage emotions? How do we help them strategize for coping? You guys can keep on up. How do we help them cope with stress, disappointment, and conflict healthy? Because things are going to happen on the job. But if we don't have that open communication with our adult children, then who are they going to talk to about these things? Their friends who don't know nothing or don't know more than what they know. So we want to make sure that we help them learn how to set boundaries. We want to make sure that we help them understand the importance of establishing clear personal boundaries in all relationships with friends, partners, family to protect one's being. But again, it's having those conversations with them. How is this person treating you? How did this person treat you? What was your response? If they're not children, then why are we still talking to them with kid gloves? And then when it comes to their career and continuous growth, what conversations are we having with them when it comes to tips for job searching? What kind of tips or what kind of conversations are we having with them when it comes to interviewing and making a good, strong first impression? Now, we might be having these conversations with people in the street, strangers, young people, but with our adults. Are we having mock interviews? Are we giving them the tools that they need as adults to learn how to communicate with other adults, to ask for what they want, to stand on their own? Or workplace etiquette, understanding professional norms and communication. This is a lifelong learning. This doesn't stop. This doesn't end when you get to your 40s or 50s. We're constantly learning. But if we start planting the seeds or we start educating them in their 20s when they're adults, it just will make for a better and more equipped adult. With a degree, understanding continuous skill development is crucial for career longevity. Because you can't wait for others to change for you to heal. We got to do that on our own. So how do we learn how to set boundaries with other people? Trial and error? Okay. But if we have these conversations with our adult children, even maybe reenact some things, we're setting them up in adulthood, for adulthood. So I had a video that was explaining a hard-earned lesson when you get stuck, when you wait for an apology that may never come. It teaches young adults to adjust expectations of others' emotional capabilities by shifting focus from changing others to now managing our own reaction. We teach them how to build true resilience, which is a crucial tool for adult living. So the video I had was setting boundaries with emotionally immature people, because that's one of the things that, you know, they're going to deal with on the workforce. And those are the kinds of conversations. That's how we continue to be effective in our parenting. That's how we continue to show up with adult children. So with 6 minutes left, I want to encourage you all to join the Facebook group page, because this conversation is essential for all of us to have for the beneficial relationships that we want to have with our adult children. I talk to so many parents that are so happy about the milestones that they have with their adult children, but they're still not releasing that parental hold on adults. So I need you guys to join the Facebook group page so that you guys can share some of your stories, because I know that episode that I did with Young Flo about letting go, that has gone viral and have gotten reposted over 100 times now, because we don't know how to let go, and we don't have to let go. We just gotta readjust and make it make sense for the age that they're at now. So follow, like, share, so that we're not alone in this conversation. You can listen on all podcast platforms. You can go and download me on Roku or Apple TV or In the Black Network and watch and stream the show there. But in all these things, you can still go to YouTube. But in all these things that I want you to do, whether it's YouTube, whether it's In the Black, whether it's podcast platform, whether it's public access, is don't just listen to listen. Don't just even listen to your children so that you can wait to respond to tell them all the things you know. Listen to heal. Listen to hear, so that we can be better. Because ultimately, isn't that what we want? That's why this show, that's why it's called The Next Chapter. Because we discuss shades of gray, because everything is not black and white. We got so much we need to uncover, my friends. And in uncovering, that's why I joined Unveil Unlock. Because in uncovering, we're unveiling and unlocking all of the past traumas that has been put on us to make it difficult, even with good intentions, to be the best we can be. And that's what Jehovah wants us to have. That's why he gave us this gift of life. He wants us to enjoy. That's why we're still in this place of learning, so that we can get the opportunity to draw closer to him with the knowledge that has been taken away from us, because the devil wants us to be clouded and serve incorrectly and have these relationships that are not working, even though our gut says, hey, wait, why don't my children talk to me? Hey, wait, why don't I talk to my children? So next week, I don't think we have to do a part 2, because the only other thing I wanted to talk about was digital citizenship and personal safety. But we can have that conversation in another segment. I just hope that you guys really understood my reason is that if you're gonna live with your adult children, don't just make it superficial. Hi, bye, how you doing, son? How you doing, daughter? Have the adult conversations with them now. They're out there living adult situations. So have these real conversations with them. Because even if it doesn't do anything in their 20s, I guarantee you it will in their 30s. I guarantee you it will in their 30s. And isn't that what we want? We want our children to have better lives than what we had. And I'm going to tell you, friends, I didn't have a bad life. But I wish, what was the name of the show? What was the name of the show? I wish I knew then. I wish I knew then. And I swear, I wish I knew then. So then the wish I knew then are my adult children. Because I can't do it over, but they can do it better. This is the next chapter where we discuss shades of gray. I am your host, Minister Cat, AKA Miss Kitty Rose. I thank you for sharing this journey with me. I thank you for being on this journey with me. I thank you for not judging, but actually listening, so that you see the benefits that I'm reaping with my adult children, that you too can reap with yours. And if you can give me some tidbits, please share them. Go to the Facebook group page, put them in there, and let me know how we can be more effective. So follow, like, and share the next chapter where we discuss shades of gray. I am your host, Minister Cat, AKA Miss Kitty Rose, and I am grateful to the Creator to allowing the Holy Spirit to move through me to share this message of faith and hope and success. Because the things I'm learning, I have been applying them, my friends. And I'm going to tell you, they've been working for me. I have wonderful relationships right now with my adult children, and I'm grateful to them for also being my teacher. I'm Minister Cat, AKA Miss Kitty Rose, and this is another episode of the next chapter where we discuss shades of gray. Next week, we'll have Did You Know back. Next week, we have Deso from the New Music Festival coming to visit, and we have another episode of Flow With Me coming next week, so stay tuned. I see you guys in the Matrix. Peace.
Tim's on my feet, stomping out the negativity. Everybody not a friend of me. Spread the love, still I move deliberately. Bully face on, but the smile be heavenly. Brooklyn girls, so they love the energy, love sincerity. So I take the liberty to